Alrighty, hello everybody. How is everyone doing this wonderful Sunday? New moon last Friday, hopefully a little bit of a reset. I know I felt the reset. Man, last month was super chaotic for me. Very transformative, very deep, makes sense for eclipses, but that was definitely one of the most powerful for me. So hey everyone, so it looks like we have gift wrapped. Great to see you. Thank you so much. Gina Swina. So I asked everyone how they're finding the energy at this moment. Gina Swina says thick and palpable. Yeah, so it feels like, I don't know. Tell me, do you guys think it feels like a reset? Do you feel like since Friday it's been a kind of different energy than the previous month? And if so, how would you compare the two? Because I'm seeing it as a bit, actually a lot smoother, clearer, but still quite strong, I would say. And there's certainly still a lot going on collectively. Hey, Margaret, thanks for joining, of course. Thanks for moderating, as always. Karmic Kerfuffle, great to see you here. So Erica says, the energy for myself is to exit my toxic work environment and work from home. Corruption, chaos, and distractions all around. Filling out an application after this lovely chat. All right, that's awesome. That's amazing. Great to hear that. That would be, I think, a great way of working with this new moon, for this new lunar cycle. The new moon was right in between Virgo and Libra. So I think it's going to play more into the Libra side. We've got the sun entering Libra tomorrow. And so the theme for this month is about bringing things back into balance. This is great from Erica's perspective, I think, bringing balance to our work environment. But it all depends on where Libra is in our chart. So if you do want to know where these new beginnings are, find out where the very end of Virgo is, very beginning of Libra is in your chart, which house that is, and you'll see which area of life is these new beginnings. But all in all, it's a quite supportive new moon. I think a lot easier to work with than the last lunar cycle. I think a lot would agree with that. And let me go ahead and just grab my notes here. Yeah. Okay. Angelique, great to see you. Angelique says, struggling with grounding my spiritual practice. I know the things I need to do, just doing the things that I need to do are the struggle. Yeah, so I wonder if that has to do with that Virgo side too. I wonder if that's something you've been dealing with last lunar cycle, because Angelique has 5th house Virgo and North Node in the 5th, 11th house Pisces, South Node in the 11th. So that would be, so your life path is very much about finding what makes you tick, your self-expression, finding what you love, finding your passion. But being Virgo, it takes the work, right? It takes that self-will, self-discipline, the structure to make that happen. But that's really good that you're working on that, especially for this lunar cycle, because it looks like you're having your North Node opposition. And I think we talked about that last time, right? Yeah. Have Bliss, great to see you. Erica, good afternoon from Southeast Alabama. Soon to relocate further eastward. All right, so changes to home, maybe your 4th house, maybe Libra's in your 4th house. Curious if you're also feeling that new energy since Friday. So Harmony Goddess Astrology says, I'm feeling like it's a bottleneck on the verge of being released into the universe, but in a controlled way. Interesting. Yeah, I do feel the bottleneck. I do feel the controlled experience. Wonder where that bottleneck energy is coming from, actually, astrologically. So right now we've got, the sun entering Libra. We've got Mercury about to leave Libra and go into deep Scorpio. We have the moon in Scorpio today specifically, and tomorrow will be in Ophiuchus. So it is a deeper part of the lunar cycle, or what I should say is a deeper part of the lunar month, these next 2 days, today and tomorrow. Good for healing, personal transformation. And so Mercury going into Scorpio is going to be a much deeper mind and much deeper communications for this next, at least, few weeks. Let's go ahead and see exactly how long Mercury will be in Scorpio and Ophiuchus. And yes, he will go retrograde, won't he? Let's take a look at Mercury's retrograde. So Mercury goes retrograde in Ophiuchus. I haven't looked this far. Mercury goes retrograde in Ophiuchus on November 26th, so at the end of this month. So that likely means a lot of reflecting and rethinking about this deeper energy, in fact. Starting to redo whatever it is that we're going to start to be thinking about very recently here. So our mind's going into that underworld literally like tomorrow, starting to think about our deeper values, starting to think about what's going on behind the veil in our life, personal life, professional life. And let's see where Mercury goes station. So that's about 5 degrees into Scorpio. So this Mercury retrograde at the end of this month is actually going to play a big role in terms of what starts to shift November 7th. So just at the end of this week. November 7th is Thursday. So pay attention to what you start to think about on Thursday, what you start to incorporate into your life starting Thursday, because those are things that are likely going through the retrograde, going through the reworking process. And a good way of working with that Mercury will be to do just that, to be flexible with the things that start November 7th on Thursday, and be ready to re-edit, redo, remake, reprocess, and then giving it all the way until Mercury leaves his station, which will be around January 3rd. There's a lot of retrograde in general, so a lot of people place a lot of emphasis on the outer planets being retrograde, but the outer planets are all kind of on the same part of the chart right now, and they all go retrograde every year for 4 to 6 months. So these are all very common things right now, is to have a lot of outer planets retrograde. But what's really important, in my opinion, is when the fast moving planets go retrograde, like the Mercury retrograde. I mean, he's retrograde 3 times a year. But it's now what we have coming up here in December is Mars retrograde, and that's very significant. This only happens about every 2.5 years. So Mars goes retrograde December 6th. So this is in Cancer as well. And if we look so Mars retrograde is a time of starting to, rethink what motivates us, what drives us, what are we putting our energy into, what are our goals, what can we take action on? And that's going to be reflective on stuff that we've been incorporating for a long time now, since Mars was in Gemini. So Mars, let's see, so that's about 8 degrees. So let's see when Mars was in that part of Gemini. So we're going to be redoing some big stuff at the end of this year. And that's really in the context of what started early in October. So what have you started early in October that you could see going through a reworking process and experimentation process all the way until, I believe it's March. Is it March? Mars will go direct. Oh no, February 18th. Is it 18th? Hang on one second. I don't think it's 18th. February 23rd, February 24th. Nina says lots of changes, endings, deaths, transformations, feels like homecoming, finding my power and my connection again. That's beautiful. It's awesome. Powerful, but also painful. Yeah. That's a really good way of describing the energy that I felt as well. Hey, Machine, great to see you. The background music is from just a YouTube channel called Lo-Fi Girl, but I always just do a search for chill music. I just type in chill music in YouTube, and this one always comes up towards the top. It's a live stream as well. It's just a continuous playlist live stream of this music. T-Post, thanks for joining. So Erica asks, what is a way to end True Sky Virgo season? Or no, what a way, sorry. Erica, what a way to end True Sky Virgo season, leaving chaos in the workplace, to Libra season, balancing personal and creative life. Yeah, for sure. Gift wrap is feeling calm. I'm feeling the calm today. Wonder if that's from the moon in Scorpio. So Have Bliss has recently discovered NLP and hypnosis during a Venus and Mercury return in Ophiuchus. Well, that's great. Yeah, Ophiuchus the healer. Aquarius Sky Club, great for you to join us. Christine, energy's been insane. Yeah, it's insane for me last month. This month, though, since Friday, I have to say well, man, the night before, what was that? Thursday night was crazy. Like literally the ending of the last cycle was crazy too. Maybe I'm speaking too soon, but since Friday, things have seemed a lot easier. For me anyways. Yeah, Lindsay says last month was more rushed, more hurried, intense, muddled. Yeah, that's how I felt. Yeah, this month feels clear, yeah. So Karmic Kerfuffle says, on the new moon, I found my way forward with my health journey. It was a sudden shift from feeling sick and exhausted for weeks and weeks to having energy again. That is great. That is really good. And very Virgo and Pisces energy there. Hi from Casablanca. All right. Is it Kansea? Kansea, thanks for joining. Yeah, Christine, orgasmic couple of days with moon and Scorpio and Ophiuchus. Yeah, it would be a great day for having that sort of deep dive and personal transformation in life. Yeah, Mercury retrograde November 26th, was it? And for Angelique, that was the day my mother died 8 years ago. Interesting. Okay. And I'd be very curious then where you have Ophiuchus then, if it is in the 4th. Oh, but you already told me. So see, your 5th house is Virgo. So Virgo 5th, so Ophiuchus is either, it's probably in your 6th or maybe your 7th. So that would deal with relationships there then. Yeah. So Have Bliss is, I'd appreciate any info you add about lunar cycles, maybe related to moon in Leo in the 10th house. Yeah, so, with lunar cycles, we want to always follow, I think, the rhythm of the cycle. New moons are the lowest energy of the cycle. That's really where we have the ending of the previous one and the beginning of the new one. So it's really the lowest energy, just in general. And once we get to the first quarter moon, which is what we're going to have this week on Friday, we usually come to the first challenges of the lunar cycle and where things start to manifest. So any seeds that were planted from the new moon, good to challenge ourselves with on the first quarter, take action towards, and start to notice the manifestations of things. That's really where things will manifest, especially in the context of any intentions from the new moon. And then the full moon is the halfway point, which usually comes with a status check, some sort of insight and awareness. That's the highest energy of the lunar cycle, and making some kind of pivot along the life journey. And then the third quarter is the last action phase, where we can take those last actions, and we're really wrapping things up in terms of what's manifesting, and all the stuff from the full moon starts to manifest in the third quarter. And then we complete the cycle So endings, wrapping things up towards the ending cycle, the balsamic phase, and gear it for the new moon again. So very important to, I think, be aware of this, of the lunar cycle, because when we're living in accordance with it, our life tends to have a lot of flow. So for example, if we're being like extremely extroverted and very achievement oriented during a new moon, we're sort of working against the energy, right? Because the new moon is supposed to be new beginnings and planting new seeds. And if we're being very, passive or more kind of inward during a full moon, we're also against the cycle. We're not able to utilize the momentum and the energy and the outer expression that the full moon gives us. If we're not taking action during the quarters, we're missing out on manifestation, and it can feel like things are happening to us instead of us being proactive in life. So it's very important, the first quarter, the third quarter. So again, what we have starting on Friday, to be very proactive during those times, take those actions. So it's extremely important. That's why there's been a lot of studies on like planting gardens during certain phases of the lunar cycle, and how some seedlings, some plants prefer being planted at certain phases. They do better at certain phases than others. I'll tell you, I just grew a bunch of random seeds because I'm doing the gardening now, and the first plot, which I just planted a bunch of like lettuce type seeds, so like spinach, charge, kale, lettuce, all this stuff, and it's just random, just a bunch of different seeds. And what grew out of that batch was wildly different than what I had done just 3 weeks later. So 3 weeks later, I did the same thing, and completely different, and with the same mix of seeds, mind you, with completely different plants dominating and being more prevalent during that planting. Because I was thinking, okay, if I plant all these seeds, then they're all going to kind of, equally grow. They're all going to have like an equal chance. And, if any plant is very fast growing at one time, it's going to be fast growing in the next time too, right? That's my logic. But actually it turned out that the first batch, plants thrived that weren't even part of the second batch, and plants that weren't even existent in the first batch completely thrived and overgrew in the garden the second batch. And that tells me that, there's some climate difference, but not really in 3 weeks. I mean, there's definitely been a little bit of a difference here where I am a little bit more rain, a little bit cooler, right? In the northern hemisphere. But in 3 weeks, that's not much. And I'm telling you, it was completely different plants in both two sets, even though they were all the same seeds. So that tells me that, the lunar cycle is part of it, but every cycle in life, the lunar cycle is one of them, and I think a very important one. It's very important in determining, the seeds we plant, depending on when we plant them, determine the kind of plant that we'll see. And that goes for our personal life too. If we do something during a certain phase of the cycle, it suggests that, we're more likely to see certain results than if we do the exact same thing during a different phase. And just based on what we know, it's like, okay, let's take two things. Let's say, applying for a job, right? So we can apply for a job on a new moon, and the kind of job we might get will be, or offers or interviews will be completely different than the ones during the first quarter. And my bet is that the ones we get during the new moon will be more kind of passive types of jobs, like jobs that probably won't require as much energy, much productivity. Maybe they're in industries that are a little bit more chill or relaxing. And then if you were to do the same thing during a first quarter, you're probably going to get a bunch of interviews or jobs where they're much quicker, more faster paced, they require more action, things like this. I haven't tested this, of course, completely fully, but I do know for sure that the sort of seeds you plant during different phases of the cycle really do change based on when we plant these things in our life. So that's why I think it's so important, to be in alignment with the cycle. So at least our bodies and our unconscious and our spiritual selves can be attuned. That can help guide us to making certain kinds of decisions and taking certain kinds of actions at certain phases of the cycle, Oh, so Machine? Yeah, so Machine's asking, Crow didn't have you on for an update before election. Well, I was on, so I was on, I think, earlier this year, right? Yeah, I was on earlier this year, and I made my sort of election predictions there. But that's a good point. I haven't been on the Crow show in a little bit. Maybe I'll shoot them over an email, see if they'll have me on. We usually meet early in the year, but there's been a few years where we've met twice a year. But yeah, I love talking about that stuff on Crow's show, just making these kinds of probabilistic predictions. So, and someone asked about the election last week during this live stream, and then I looked into a little bit more. Yeah, so I think Trump is probably going to win, and I think that's the highest probability, because I don't predict the future. I don't believe our futures have been predetermined, but I would say there's a higher probability that Trump wins. But then there's some kind of recount or some kind of something goes back and gets reassessed, or the Democrats go after Trump or whatever. And then what happens after that, I'm not sure. But that's where the probabilities look, and that's based on that configuration we saw last week on November 5th with all the planets. I think Mars is a little bit stronger than Venus, Mars being Trump, Venus being Harris. So Mars is stronger there, and so I think that's where he's more likely to win astrologically. But then the fact that Mars goes retrograde, that's what is very interesting, and that's what leads me to think some kind of going back over, redoing something or rather, or him being elected, but then there's a lot of things that maybe block that or try to stop that. And that's not really surprising with the climate that we're seeing, but it does look like something like that astrologically. So Mars was in Cancer a lot. Last time was retrograde in Cancer. Yeah, that's because of Mars's cycle, being 2.5 years. Every time he goes retrograde, he's not too far from the last place he was retrograde. So he kind of goes in order with all of his retrogrades. Okay, Angelique. Yeah, so Ophiuchus starts in your 7th house. That means we have very similar charts, actually, Angelique. Mine also starts in the 7th. But that would make sense too with what you told me earlier. Right, and so what the lunar cycle was when you were born is extremely important too, right? So Have Bliss says I was born on a last quarter moon, so a 3rd quarter. So that means your life energy is going to have last quarter energy. So it's about prolonging things. So you would be a more action-oriented person, maybe noticing a bit of a conflict between your conscious self and your inner self, because the sun and moon would be in a square, right? Now it's much easier than a 1st quarter, I'd have to say, for those born under a 1st quarter moon, where the moon is ahead of the sun by 90 degrees, they're squaring each other. That's more challenging because we haven't fully integrated the lunar cycle yet. It's still early in the cycle. So you don't have it as difficult as that, and I wouldn't say it's particularly difficult either. It's just that there is that conflict between your conscious self and your inner self, your mind and your body, or whatever. And these two parts not feeling totally in harmony. So your life path, your life energy is to integrate these two very different energies: how you feel and how you think, what you're perceiving outwardly, what you're perceiving inwardly, and doing your best to integrate these two things. But I highly recommend everyone check out your chart if you haven't yet for the lunar cycle. What lunar cycle were you born in? And that's going to tell you a lot about not only your personality, but your life experiences. It's so important. The sun and moon is so important. So Carolyn says, I would like a true sidereal monthly transit calendar. So Phoenix Aurelius has a yearly calendar, and it's in true sidereal format. Margaret, if you could do me a favor and search for Phoenix true sidereal calendar, So it's Phoenix Aurelius, but I think you just need to type in Phoenix True Sidereal Calendar, and he might, but he probably doesn't have the 2025 out just yet. But if you could post the link, Margaret, that way everyone has it, because I used to do the yearly planners for the transits, but now Phoenix does it, and it's awesome, and it's both a digital and a physical calendar if you want it, but it is using the midpoint method, the same method we use. Gift wrap, that's called chaos gardening. Yeah, that's how I've been wanting to garden more lately. It seems like chaos to us, but really the way I see it is just it's more in alignment with nature. I want nature to choose which seedlings and which plants are going to that we want to grow, and planting a bunch of seeds like that, yeah, most of those seeds aren't going to make it, but the ones that are strongest will, and that's what I want in the garden, and it's how life works. Life doesn't plot all these plants in like nice rows and everything. It's a forest, and that's how I've been wanting to garden more. Is more like a forest, just random seeds being blown around everywhere, and then letting life kind of decide what grows and what doesn't. At the same time, I'm deciding too. Like I just thinned a bunch of those what is it? It was turnip greens. So it was the turnip greens that went nuts this second planting, and I just cut away so many. I have I don't even know how many pounds, probably at least 6 pounds, and all grew in 3 weeks. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But I had to get rid of them because they were blocking the sun and everything from the other plants. So Margaret says, I think this Mars retrograde in Cancer is going to be really significant in terms of feminine energy in the world around us. Yeah, so I think it's always good to reconnect with the masculine and feminine. So Mars is, of course, the masculine. So I think it'll be great to reconnect with the masculine within all of us, because we all have that masculine side, and that's what I think the retrograde's about, is turning inward, reconnecting with that particular side of ourselves. But because Mars is retrograde, which is I think what Margaret's pointing out here, is that it does give a break to the feminine, gives a break to the masculine, so that the feminine energy can be a little more prominent and a little bit more encouraged as well. So yeah, and so when one goes retrograde, it makes the other more prominent, but it is this dance. It goes back and forth, and I think it's all about helping us integrate both aspects. And but with the case of Mars, definitely more of the inner masculine, or the masculine in general that requires that inner connectivity, but that can definitely give more of a prominence to the feminine energy, and more awareness probably to the feminine energy as well during that time. And maybe you said that because it's Cancer, because Cancer is feminine. So Mars in Cancer is specifically about integrating the masculine and the feminine together. So Have Bliss says, I experimented with cutting hair and the lunar cycle. And they were so cutting hair and the lunar cycle works the same way as I think what you're referring to is the garden analogy. Yeah, they grow faster. Interesting. So the hair grows faster. That's very interesting. So they grow fast. So the hair grows faster during the new moon, stays in shape longer in the waning phase. Wow, that's really cool. So homunculus highway. Perhaps non-anticipated fluctuating plant growth is indicative of Tycho Brahe model of dueling luminary cycles influenced more highly beyond sun and moon at intervals. So I'm not familiar with that Tycho Brahe model, but yeah, if you have a link or something, I'm sure there's a lot that'd be interested in that. What would be the best lunar cycle for a wedding? So my son proposed to his girlfriend. They want to get married next year. Well, that's subjective. I mean, if it's a marriage for celebration, which I would say, I would imagine most of us who are getting married or going to a wedding, it's a form of celebration. If that's the case, then a full moon. Full moon is the time of celebration. Also more extroverted, more energy. If it's supposed to be more romantic, more spiritual, more peaceful, and more like a new moon. If it's a party, I don't know, well, action, you want a lot of action from the quarters. Probably not too many would agree that the quarters are the best time, unless you're trying to manifest something specifically. You could think of the wedding as trying to manifest. So it really depends on what the intention is for the wedding. But again, lower energy, higher energy, action, non-action, it depends on what the wedding's supposed to be about. But generally, I would say for those celebrating, it would be the full moon. So, Homunculus Highway, curious about your thoughts regarding the plausibility of the sun having had a binary. I think there's actually a very high probability that the sun is part of a binary star system right now. And it's just such a large cycle, it's very difficult to see or measure. And I think it would explain a lot like precession. All right, everyone, so we're going to be wrapping up here. That was another fast 30 minutes. So I'll just go through these questions one last time. Yeah, so new moon person born during a new moon is likely to be very much connected to the more intuitive, inward energies of life. Someone who's kind of always starting, getting things moving, and someone who's more attuned, I think. It's more yin time. If we think of everything as sort of yin yang, the new moon is the more yin time, more spiritual, more inward time. Chaos gardening, yeah. All right, everyone. So have a great week. Thank you again. Hope you have an awesome week. There'll be that first quarter moon on Friday. Good for action. Let me know how that goes. And by this time next week, we'll be in a more kind of momentum building phase, and we'll be approaching that full moon. So we'll see how everyone feels at that time too. But yeah, thank you again. Have a great one, everyone. And I'll see you all next time for the next live stream. Take care.